Well, hi there. You're listening to Creative Status. My name is Ollie Anderson. I'm a transformational coach. I help people to live lives and create businesses that are more real. Real means it's aligned with the unfolding that is constantly taking place within and without as we move towards more wholeness. Realness just means we embrace the things that carry us in that direction. As we do, the unconscious becomes conscious, and we might do all kinds of creative things, hence the main theme of this podcast. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Thank you for joining me. If you're coming back, thanks a bunch. I appreciate it. Today's interview is with Cristina Bonnet. Cristina is a holistic coach. She helps people to kind of bring all the different pieces together so that they can flow and move in a real direction. This conversation is about one of my favorite topics at the moment. Some of the best episodes I've done recently have been about this, in my opinion. And the topic is some of the spiritual bullshittery that's out there, especially online. There's a lot of weird stuff going on where people are using the ego, I believe, to sell spirituality to people as a kind of panacea. Obviously, the truth can solve most of your problems, but if spirituality takes you away from the truth because of marketing gimmicks and nonsense, then it's going to take you down a dark path, be a case of the blind leading the blind. That's ultimately the theme of this conversation. Like, Cristina got in touch with me because she's noticed some of this stuff as well. So yeah, if you're into that, keep listening. Cristina, thank you so much for bringing this topic to everyone's attention. And everybody else, hope you get something out of this interview. I really enjoy talking about this stuff. Here we go. Thanks a bunch. Boom. Oh, hi there, Cristina. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Creative Status. This is going to be one of those conversations, that could go in any direction. Who knows where we're going to end up. But we're going to kind of talk about some of the bullshit, let's say, that exists online, especially in the kind of the world of coaching and spirituality and all that kind of stuff. You've noticed some patterns that I find very interesting, so we're going to unpack that kind of thing. Before we get into it, do you feel like introducing yourself, telling people what you're all about, and also sharing what you want to get out of this conversation that we're about to have?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Ollie. It is really a privilege to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. So just some geographical orientation. I was born in the 80s. I grew up in Puerto Rico, in the Caribbean. And then I trained in England, India, and the States in psychotherapy and Buddhism. And I've been studying that for over 20 years. And now I work as a coach. Yes, I know that word can mean a whole lot of things. This is one of those words, but for me, it means I support people with holistic approaches. Since I'm here, I could say I help them get more real. I help them get more real to connect to what is real, what feels good within them, and to heal. I guess heal is a beautiful word. Their relationship to themselves and to life in general. And in terms of what I would love to get out of it, the truth is I really enjoy the way that you frame the inner work. I find it very creative, the way of referring to it as a creative process, and how, the connection between creativity and inner healing or inner work, I find very interesting. So I think when we throw our ideas together, I think something cool will come out of it.
Well, fingers crossed, no pressure, but it sounds like we're both on very similar paths. So obviously, as you know, like a lot of the things that I talk about are to do with holistic approaches. I think ultimately all anybody really needs to do to improve their lives is to just make the next obvious choice towards wholeness. If they can do that, then ultimately they are going to become more real. And it's a creative process because as we move towards that wholeness, a lot of the fragmentation that we've been clinging onto with our conscious mind is cleared out of the way as the unconscious becomes conscious through the creative process. And everything just becomes amazing because we can flow with life instead of forcing it. So that's awesome. That was me talking about myself. I apologize. It's my podcast. I invited you on here to talk about you. I'm going to go talk about myself. But anyway, So when it sounds like another similarity between the way that I'm seeing these things and the way that you're seeing these things, i.e. the healing process, is that it's actually quite simple. Like maybe it's not easy. Like obviously there's a lot of challenging things that we may have to go through as we put ourselves on the path of moving towards wholeness. But structurally, it is quite simple. It's moving from fragmentation to wholeness, or from unreal to real, or from a disconnection to the truth to a connection to the truth. And if you look at it like that, then there is a lot of kind of overcomplicated nonsense, dare I say, out there in the world that is making people, to some extent, walk paths that seem like healing, but which are actually just kind of causing them to stray away from the truth because it's making them become more fragmented. So I don't know if that's the kind of thing that you even want to talk about here on the podcast. But based on some of the things you shared previously about just some of the things you've noticed out there online, maybe that's a good starting point.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. I mean, I think you said it in super cool ways. I know when we spoke last time, when you spoke about fragmentation, I thought, wow, yeah, that's a word I've been looking for, because that's sort of what I mean, that I see it again and again working with people, and it seems to me like people grow towards that wholeness more actually in a way of decluttering. Actually, it's a sort of sense of decluttering, and by learning to rest calmly in the here and now. And I think nothing can be more simple than that. And yet, of course, as we know, those of us who've been attempting it, nothing can be harder than that, because of all sorts of, we know, right? Egoic defenses, evolutionary impulses, who knows, karma, who knows what. But nevertheless, this is where we find ourselves, that it does seem like the ultimate move to simplicity and wholeness is to just rest calmly in the, let's say, here and now, just in the sense of being connected to the present, to what is real in that sense, what it's here and what it's now. And what I'm finding is that the world of self-improvement, of self-development, has become a real jungle. This has become a place with so many methods, ways. People come and then they have a very differentiated and also sophisticated way of describing their inner world, which is great. You know, people come and they know their attachment styles. They're trying to be embodied. They're trying to work through trauma, intergenerational trauma, watching out for narcissists and gaslighters, and putting personal boundaries and self-care. And, you know, it's just, oh my God, it's a lot. Yeah. And I think it's making people's experiences very rich, because we have a lot of ways of recognizing patterns that we formerly did not have. However, the process, this is almost like one process, which is to learn to name things, to learn to recognize things, but then the process of letting it go and just be with themselves and allowing life to unfold in that way, right? Like you said, like we're not fighting against it, we're sort of flowing with it. It's become very much almost, you know, what comes to my mind now is that it's really the world of self-help and self-improvement. It seems to me like it's reflecting almost the neoliberal, capitalist, individualist society we live in. That just, in the sense that it's almost like I can do it. I need to be able to change myself. There's no longer space for life or something bigger or community. It's more like I'll sit down, I'm going to close my eyes, I'm going to do all of this work, and then I am going to fix me. And so That's something I'm super interested in.
Yeah, I can tell that you're just really passionate about this, and that you must see it every time you like go on the internet, because that is the culture, the predominant culture that's been kind of built around the self-help stuff. And I think the way that you just described it, you've hit the nail on the head. It's all about me fixing me. Okay, great. But actually what people don't seem to realize is that the problem is me. Like, if you're too attached to your ego or your idea of the little me as opposed to the big me, let's say, or the real version of who you are, if you're too attached to the ego and you try to do everything by yourself and you try to force life to your will, then you're just making the problem worse. Like, the missing ingredient, the thing that people actually need and that will serve them and help them to move forward in the way that they claim to want to, is humility. Like, humility is ultimately about accepting your limits. It's having a healthy relationship with your limits, understanding that there are certain universal laws that apply to all of us, the main one being the law of cause and effect, and understanding that sometimes the cause is out of our control, and being humble enough to know that we're not omniscient and we're not omnipotent, and that actually we have to surrender to life and let go and allow life to fix us, not to just try and fix ourselves, in the language you're using, by filtering everything through our desires rather than our actual true intentions in connection to life. And so what you said about, neo-capitalism and individualism and blah, 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 it's true. Like, the main reason that spirituality has become about that, i.e. individuality with the volume turned up, is because it's selling people's insecurity back to them as the solution to the problem that they don't even really realize that they have. But it's basically saying, right, if you're an extreme individual and you pick that individuality off the shelf based on your emotional needs and all that kind of stuff, then you're gonna find peace. But actually, the emotional stuff and the version of ourselves that we've created as a response to those emotions, normally shame, guilt, and trauma, that just creates all of these false desires and things that we think we want, which just makes the problem worse. So as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this as well, and I've just rambled. I'm probably making things way worse than they need to be. But what do you think about that idea that the missing ingredient is what I call humility? Maybe use a different word or something, but like, how does, there's the version of spirituality that we're seeing, which is me. I am God. I am so powerful. I can, click my heels together and say a magic word 3 times and blah, blah, blah. There's that, but then there's something else which is bigger and I think is more real. Like, how do you describe that?
Oh, wow. I'm in a trance listening. It's connecting so many things I've thought about. It's because it also brings the word that we often don't. Like, some people are allergic to it, but some people are attracted to it. But it's the world of the unknown, the spirit, or whatever you want to call it. Like, there are things that are out of control. I think even the most atheist, skeptical person would agree there are things that are out of our control, including the way our nerve cells are firing, moment by moment. And I love the humility part, because that's actually, in a way, the attitude that I think can be most helpful. And I mean that in the sense of, in today's, I see it, like, people are trying to heal, for example, and this has become, I was listening to something like that. So one, let's say, example that can happen. It's somebody comes and they have, let's say, cancer, for example, and then they are doing, if they are taking care of themselves, they have a team of people who are taking care of them. That's awesome. Then they have, psychological support. That's awesome. That's really great that all of this is available. And then this nagging thing that if only they could hit the right spot in their inner world, like they could somehow hack life so that they would be able to heal, and it somehow like, oh, if I only manage to convince God in a certain way, convince life, and clear every single darkness inside of me, then I will make this go away. And it's very much, I think it can very much be a trap, and a subtle trap, because nobody, I think, would disagree that stress and all of these things contribute to our health. Like it's not like it's completely unrelated, but I was listening to this and then having that reflection that when I think it is up to me to heal this, and then I think even this shouldn't be happening, it's almost like I'm saying the world, you are making mistakes, because I actually know what is best, and what is best is full health, and what is best is healing. And that little word humility, when you can really connect to a sense of wonder, of unknown, like, wow, this is happening. Like, what can I trust life? Can I trust the process? And gosh, it's easier said than done. I've had my own issues when it's dealing with difficult issues. Oh my God, this sounds just like madness, because one does want to feel well. It's not, I don't want to oversimplify it, but I do wonder at times that at least the trajectory, like the direction we're trying to get to, it could be more, like you say, in a sense of trusting what is, trusting the way things unfold, rather than having like a business plan, like a goal, like I'm going to get healthy. That's my goal. Let me see how I reach it. And it's very willful, right? It's very much saying my self-will is this one, and life, can you please make it happen now?
Yeah. That's the key word. Now. Make it happen now. Like, I'm going to click my fingers, or I'm going to say some magic spell, or I'm going to, I don't know, appease God in some way, and all of my problems are going to be solved. The reason that doesn't work, in my opinion, is because it's a lack of acceptance. What we're talking about really now is acceptance. Like, personally, I think the law of attraction and things like that, there is some validity to those things, and it work, but only if you're being real and you've got that foundation of acceptance to start with. If you're trying to appease God from let's just say God for the sake of saying God, like if you're trying to appease God or the universe or whatever, because your inner experience is based on fear and doubt and a lack of acceptance, let's call it ignorance, then you're just going to make life worse for yourself. So I just want to put that out there, because I don't want to be one of these people that just dismisses everything completely. Like, I think, the universe is way more mysterious than we'll ever truly understand. But like, people filter it through the ego because they're ultimately not ready to accept life. The reason the ego exists in the first place is because we're not ready to accept some truth. That's basically what all of this boils down to. And so if spirituality is ultimately about this journey of moving closer to the truth, but there's this version online that is taking people away from it, then we can safely assume that it's the ego that's the main problem. There's something else I want to say. So the cancer example that you gave, or just illness in general, is super relevant to my life. I've had two experiences, one based on an experience of knowing somebody, and then an experience in my own life. So the first example is a story of somebody that I used to live with. Basically, when I was in Tokyo, I used to live with somebody. Unfortunately, this guy got cancer, and he bought into this idea that he doesn't need to take his medication or any of that stuff. He was basically going to put himself in tune with the universe, and he was going to do loads of yoga and all this kind of stuff. And he thought that would solve the problem of the cancer. Steve Jobs is another example. Apparently, like Steve Jobs, I don't know how true it is, but apparently he turned down chemotherapy and stuff like that. He just ate raw fruit and things like that. This guy that I'm talking about and Steve Jobs, unfortunately, they both died. And the reason that they put themselves on that path is because they weren't accepting the situation that they found themselves in. The other example is my own life, and it comes down to what you were saying about trust. So I've had some really serious health issues. Like I've got some problems with my kidneys. It's nearly killed me like a bunch of times. At first, I was in fact, one of the reasons I've learned all these lessons about the ego and stuff like that is because I went through this experience. But ultimately, at first, I was in complete denial. I was trying to find ways to kind of appease God in the way that you were talking about, or I became really bitter and all that kind of stuff because I wasn't accepting the situation I found myself in. Over time, I learned to accept the reality of my situation, and it became a true blessing. Like now I look at this illness that I had, actually it brought me closer to the truth because, you know, it sounds very dramatic, but like on a day-to-day basis, you know, I'm still closer to death than the average person. Like I'm kind of laughing to myself as I say this because it does sound dramatic, but that closeness to knowing that it's all going to end one day has really put me in this space of flow and acceptance. And if you cultivate acceptance, that is when you kind of get this kind of deeper relationship with life, because once you accept it, the only thing you can accept ultimately is the truth, and then you're going to keep flowing and things like that. So what you've said, as far as my life experience anyway, is 100% valid, and it all boils down to that word that you said, which is trust. When we're in the ego and we're trying to control everything, if we're trying to control everything and we're not, we don't have that humility that we were talking about, the thing that we lack is trust. Trust just means letting go, basically. Letting go of the need to control, letting go of the fear, letting go of the worry, letting go of everything ultimately that doesn't serve us, and just going with life no matter how good or bad it seems, because we transcend our experiences and our attachment to them, and we just let them pass. And then when we can do that, we're just living life in a very real way. So again, I'm throwing loads at you, but I suppose the question is, how do we learn to trust in this way that you're talking about? If we can.
Yes. Wow. Beautiful. I did read in your website your story, and that I thought, yeah, that's the real deal. Because I do know I've also experienced health challenges in my own way. And I do have to say there is something about that confronts us with a lot of stuff, like basically all the stuff. I always say that's where the shit hits the fan. It's like that's, you know, everything else. No, there's a lot of problems, of course, but I have the feeling when the body's aching, when really the experience is truly uncomfortable, this is where it becomes more than words, to quote that song. But more than words, it just becomes much more, okay, how do you... You're kind of forced. In a way, you're kind of forced. Either you go to war or you make peace with life. Like there's certain situations in life, as you know, that basically those are the two options. And like you said, I heard a spiritual teacher, somebody I really love, which is Byron Katie. I studied a lot with her, and she does inquiry work. But she told somebody who was also dealing with cancer, and she asked her if cancer was the only way that you could become awakened to your inner beauty, and this was the only way, would you choose it? Would you choose it? And okay, that's where the conversation is leading us, to deal more with these health things. But I think that we can take those more, I'd say, extremes, because living, you know, in the big questions, existential questions of life, death, and medicine, not medicine, that's brilliant. But we can use that as a template also for other things in life as well. Relationships that don't go well, money, of course, career, and that balance. I think I really have thought about it, and I'm not sure how many people are thinking about it, so I'm really enjoying talking to someone who has. But this manifestation, you know, the world of manifestation and making things happen, and that subtle balance between yes, it's not like it's bad to sort of gear myself towards goodness and prime myself towards things that are good. I guess better than thinking only negative things will happen. Even though sometimes the mind just thinks those things and it's also out of our control, to some extent. So let's say with relationships, I think that world of, again, let's say trust and humility, we've caught on those two words. Like, let's say I am in love with someone, they don't love me back. That's another one of those human, it seems like universal experience, right? And then the humility there is also to, like, this idea I have, like, no, everybody I like should like me back. Like, that's how it goes. And I have a right to demand that everybody that I like should like me back. That's in somewhere underlying there, the lack of humility in somewhere in us, not all of us.
Yeah.
And then there is the other side of the trust where you think, wow, not for me. And without needing to call the other person a narcissist or without needing to say they're unavailable and this or that, which maybe they are, but the fact is, it's just not for you. And sorry, I'm going around your question, but I'm going to get to it.
It's okay.
That there is this sense of trust. Like I once heard, or I think they say it in some groups, but like God only has 3 answers, and one is yes, another one is not yet, and another one is I have something better. I have something better. And that sense, I say God in the same way that you say it. It's the unknown, it's the mystery, it's something. But in moments of insights, I also think whatever it is, it's something good, it's something whole. And I think that's only something we intuit at times. And then how to develop the trust, it's, I'd say, a lifelong journey. And it does, I'd say there are 3 pillars. I'm going to go for 3 because 3 is usually one of those, the Trinity and Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and all of this. But one is community. And I think that's often left out in the sense of how do we learn trust? This is where we learn it at the nervous system level, where our human 3D life can say, hey, there are people who care for me. There are people who I can trust, maybe not perfectly, but there are people who wish me well. And that's where working with a coach, working with, or going to support groups or, just being around people that truly unconditionally wish us well, even if we are human and it's not perfect. I think that's often left also out of the self-help world because we want to say it's up to us. But sometimes we do need others. So that's that. And then the second pillar, I would say, is that's the place where well-guided methods can help in the sense of how do we use our attention? Because trust can be a concept, but I think there are ways to use our perception, our attention in a way that leads us to realize that sense of goodness and wholeness. And I know that you're doing that with your clients, and I also do that. And one of the reasons that in a way I ended up where I ended up, which is working with people who come overwhelmed, having tried all kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's because I've done it. And so in a way I have a massive, almost library of techniques and methods and ways. And the thing that can really mess you up is trying all of them. I can speak from experience. And so, but then this pillar of, okay, what are the right ways of using my attention to elicit those states of trust from within me? And that can often be as simple as sitting in a bench in a park, as I'm sure you know, looking at a tree, to, vipassana or intense shadow work. It just depends where we're at. And it depends if it's a time to dig in the past and to, bring everything up. And sometimes it's not, sometimes we need rest. Sometimes we need to integrate things. And I think that requires a very attuned process of not just saying, oh, I read on the internet that I can heal intergenerational trauma by going on this psychedelic trip. And I'm not against any of that if it's really attuned to each person and one knows. It's just that people are throwing a lot at themselves, mixing a whole bunch of stuff. And this is a wreck for the nervous system, because it's like it's trying to wind down and find rest, but we keep putting effort, techniques, goals, and stuff can get actually worse. One can get more cranked up. So sorry, I don't know if that became too complicated an answer, but let's say first pillar is community, second pillar is inner work, and then the third pillar, which I find, I'm sure there could be others, but it's what you hinted at, which I find very interesting as well, which is trying to keep things simple in the sense of trusting, like one can already do the exercise on what it's available. And I'm a big fan of what you say. Okay, what medical treatments are available? What supports are there? Why do I think the most brave thing to do is to go back to me and try to crack? I call it hack the universe into healing. So I guess I could call that surrendering to the externals in a certain way. I need to find some better words for that, but and I know we are soon wrapping up, but that sense of it's not really only up to me. I can engage with what is available and try to make myself as comfortable as possible. Actually, yes, you know what it is? It's comfort. That would be the third pillar, actually. Comfort and pleasure even. Simple, healthy pleasures. This I learned from my teacher in organic intelligence, but it doesn't have to be hard. It can be you're doing all this inner work, so get a good bath, get a good doctor, get a medicine that gives you the least side effects, how do we go and treat ourselves kindly? Because that kindness, it's almost like a reflection of, I'm going to get poetic, God's love. It's almost like all the support I can. So yes, let's call it support, comfort, pleasure. That's be my third pillar.
Yeah. I love how you just came up with those three pillars on the spot, like kind of thinking alive and fleshing things out. That's also that third pillar. It kind of like all of these things that you've talked about. Really, they kind of linked to the humility thing. I would say, ultimately, a lot of the time, the reason that like illness or heartbreak or whatever it is so powerful in our lives is because it shows us universal laws ultimately that apply to all of us. And one of the universal laws that applies to all of us is that we're not just this independent entity floating through life. We're connected to all other people. We're interdependent. We're not independent, right? And so the community pillar is about that. The attention pillar is about knowing that if you focus on wholeness instead of fragmentation, or in the permanent instead of the impermanent, then you're going to be connected to these laws and you're going to make choices that are aligned with them. And then obviously the last one about comfort and everything, it's about taking the path of least resistance, which means realizing that it's not all up to you. It doesn't need to be. You can take that pressure off yourself. There's so many resources available that can help us to get where we need to be and live good lives. But a lot of the time we're blinded by this attachment to the ignorance. I keep using this word ignorance, but anyway, this word, we're blinded by the ignorance that's causing us to believe that we do need to be singular and alone in the world and in life. when that's just that is the problem. That's what's causing our lives to feel empty or to feel the
right.
Whatever it is. So we've covered a lot. Like I think we talked about the bullshit, and maybe we've figured out a few things. It seems. I feel like I'm kind of charged up after this. How would you sum up this conversation, if you could, if it is possible? And can you let people know where they can find your website or, I don't know, social media and stuff if they want to reach out to you?
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was amazing. I have a feeling we just sort of came up with a lot of stuff. And so let me see. How do I sum it up? I guess I sum it up with the word simplicity, that good old slogan, keep it simple. Easy does it. Yeah, the easy does it, the easy way to healing, even if it's not easy. But I guess what we are saying is that we can embrace new ways of healing, new paradigms. Sometimes I like to call it the end of healing itself, because it's a need to approach it with new eyes. And I think it's the eyes of knowing that our nature, what it's real in us, already is there guiding us. It's already, sort of connected. And in a way that this inner work that we're doing is not so much to shift or change or even dramatically do something super intensely different in ourselves, but it's rather how do we connect to that nature? How do we gently unfold this in us without needing to be aggressive towards ourselves, without needing to crack the universe, just with support. Now, that giving ourselves enough support. I do need to do a better job at this. 1 second.
It's okay. You're doing good. It makes sense.
Yeah, I would say our nature is whole. Our nature is already connected, and it's much more simple than sometimes the world of self-improvement makes us think.
Yeah. That's ultimately what we're talking about. The reason I keep using this word ignorance, like I do yoga, I'm obsessed with yoga. There's a word in yoga called avidya. Basically, it's the idea of ignorance being the source of nearly all problems in life. And the reason it causes problems is because it stops us seeing what's actually there. It causes us to treat the impermanent as permanent, and that just causes all kinds of problems, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
In relation to what we're talking about, our nature is always there. Something I always say to people is what's real is always real. And if you can tap into that, then you tap into the natural processes and forces that are always unfolding in life that are carrying us towards more wholeness. It's always unfolding. Once you tune into it, you can let go and trust because it's just moving in that direction anyway. A lot of these things that we've been kind of alluding to, like a lot of the spiritual bullshittery online, it's taking people away from that because it's taking them away from their nature and causing them to believe that they're independent from everything else, even though it's dressed up as spirituality and connection. Right. It's causing them to basically over-identify with their impermanent, with their egos, which are impermanent, and treating them as permanent. That is the main problem in life. And so now that we've put the world to rights, basically we've just found the panacea for healing or something like that. That was awesome. Right. What's your website, please, and your social media and stuff like that?
Yes, thank you. So my website is my name, CristinaBonnet.com. I'm going to, I send it to you so you can put it on the show notes. Yes. And I just wanted to say, because you used that word unfold, so I do want to take a few seconds to say that that's actually the name of the new program I have, which is a 3-month program, and it's called Unfold. And it's my favorite word these days, and you used it a few times as well, because it's this sense of how do we allow, without putting pressure and without forcing it, how do we allow that goodness to unfold? So I'm very much in love with that concept, and you can check it out online, and I'm available. You can reach me there.
Well, that was a synchronicity with the unfold thing. So we must have tapped into wholeness or something. I'll definitely share your links in the show notes. Well, Cristina, thank you so much. That was awesome. And stay real out there, I guess.
Thank you. You too, Ollie. Thank you so much for this great talk.